Well, what's up? How you guys doing? Good, good. Hey, before I get started, I have some stuff to give away real quick. If you were here a couple weeks ago at our color war, you know that there's a couple individuals who won shoes, but the shoes that we had that night weren't their size. So where is Kylie at?
That was definitely me.
Where you at? Come on. Kylie, here's your Air Force Ones. Give it up. There you go. I returned them. They were 12s. And then Taylor, where you at? Taylor, here's your shoes. Thank you guys for inviting people that night, bringing people. Man, I loved the color war. I hope you guys did too. Man, I got plans for future years that's going to make that event even better. I got a couple announcements before we get going too much further tonight. And they're kind of like flashing on the screen behind me. But one is we are going to the Pumpkin Patch on the 29th of this month as a church. It's $5 to get in, and there's some like invite cards on the outlet is what we call it, and the lobby area. So if you want to grab one of those cards, we'll have them available for the next couple of weeks as well. You're going to need that to get in for the $5. There's some hay rides and different stuff at the Pumpkin Patch. All the information that you need for that event is on that card. The next thing is that we are having a Halloween party. The Halloween party is going to be the very last Wednesday night of this month. That's the 27th. So what we're doing that night is we're doing a costume contest. So if you have a Halloween costume, wear it that night. The only thing that we're asking is that nobody wears anything gory here. So we're going to give away some prizes for best dress. We're going to be playing some Halloween-themed games, some fun stuff. Nothing too scary or anything like that. Man, it's just going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you hear that night. There might even be tug of war is what I heard. I'm just saying. But then we're also going to be doing something called Friendsgiving. Friendsgiving is going to be in November. And I know you're like, that is forever away. But it is already October. So it's crazy how fast the year is moving. Basically what Friendsgiving is we're going to invite you guys here, and I'm not deciding if it's going to be all desserts, or we're just going to have a dessert night, or we're going to fix it up all right. And we're going to have a meal that night. We're going to hang out, and we're going to just have fun together, and it's going to be a big family-style dinner. And then in December, we are doing our Christmas party on that Wednesday, December 15th. So that's this third Wednesday of December. So make sure you mark those dates on your calendar so you have them, so you make sure you don't miss. The last announcement I have is last week, if you were here, you heard our Speed the Light message. And so we challenged you guys to begin giving to Speed the Light and raising money and raising funds. And I know a couple of you have already jumped into action to do so, but I want to challenge you. If you've not taken the initiative yet and started something to raise money for Speed the Light, I want to challenge you to do so. In fact, I think it's pretty awesome. Last week, as a group, you guys pledged to give $16,275 as a group. Come on, give it up for yourself real quick. Now, that's a big number, but I believe you guys can do it. I believe together we can achieve that goal. So start raising money now. That money is we're going to be collecting on December 1st, the first Wednesday of December. We're going to be bringing it that night. We're going to have a give night. So everything that you collect during that time. And then the one thing that we challenge you to do is this 1 in 1,000. And so, Addie, I know you started yours. Do you mind if I share?
Yeah.
So Addie has started her 1 in 1,000 project, and basically what she's doing is she's raising awareness for organizations like Free International and Speed the Light on her Instagram. You see, we all have social media, and social media, while it's a fun place, it can also be used for positive ways, right? There's a lot of negativity on social media sometimes, but Addie's decided to spread positivity. So she's posting pictures with people she may know, people she may not know. She's posting pictures for 50 days. And at the bottom of the pictures is information about Speed the Light, and she's collecting money from friends, teachers, stuff like that. So man, whatever it is that your hand finds to do, we're supposed to do it unto the Lord. So whatever your talent is, whatever your gifting is, I want to challenge you to begin to pray about that, on how you can begin to raise money for missions. But are you all ready for tonight? Yeah. Come on, I'm excited about it. I've been looking forward to this series. We're in a new series called Mind Games. So where's Clara at? Check this out. Did we already watch the video? Yeah, I thought so. When it started playing, I was like, maybe I've just watched it too many times. We're in a new series called Mind Games, and I've been excited about it. What I did is I gave Claire my Bible. I told you guys a couple months ago that I have my Bible that I give out that you guys can take notes and you can write and you can draw and whatever it is. The only thing is that I ask you to kind of use it for positive things, right? And I want to encourage you that it's okay to take notes in your Bible. I want to encourage you in general to take notes as I speak, because some of the things that I may say tonight or in future messages, man, it may not resonate with you right now. It may not be something that you're walking through at that moment, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be something that you're walking through. Tonight, I believe the message is something that we all walk through, and in this series, it's going to be stuff that we all walk through. You see, what my goal is throughout this series is begin to conquer topics that we, as a people, we struggle with and we fight against. And oftentimes these things we don't like talking about. They're things that we don't enjoy talking about, that we don't enjoy conversating about. Why? Because we feel like we're all alone in it. There are things that like we go through and we struggle with, that we feel like we don't have anybody to turn to, we don't have anybody to talk to, and so we kind of keep it to ourselves. And so I kind of want to break down some of those walls during this series of mind games, some of the preconceived notions that we have. I want to begin to break those down. I want to begin to talk about them, and I want to begin to help us heal mentally through them. I want to read tonight in Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 31. You may be familiar with the story, but if you're not, it's on the screen right here. It says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. Jesus had just got done talking to a massive group, and he dismissed his disciples to begin to go ahead of him. It says, after he dismissed them, he went up to the mountainside and he began to pray himself. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffered by the waves because of the wind that was against it. So here's this boat full of disciples. The wind starts picking up. There's kind of a storm beginning to brew. And here's what it says. It says, shortly before dawn, so at the darkest time of night, right? Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said. They cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, do not be afraid. Lord, if it is you, Peter replied, tell me to come onto the water. Come, he said to Peter. Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water towards Jesus. When he began to see the waves, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught him. You have little faith, he said. Excuse me, sorry, I had to turn. You have little faith, he said. Why do you doubt? And when he climbed up into the boat, the wind died down, and then they began to worship, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. You see, many of us read this story right here, and we begin to look at Peter and those words that Jesus said to him. I want to begin to change your mindset on those words here in a little bit, because Jesus says, why do you doubt? Why do you doubt? We begin to focus on Peter. We begin to critically think about him. We begin to negatively talk about him in those moments because of those words, right? But man, tonight I want to invite one of our leaders to the stage. And Katie, as actually a couple months back, talked to me about sharing. And she was going to share over summer, and some things didn't quite work out. And so tonight we have an opportunity to begin to hear from Katie and her testimony. I'm going to begin to ask her some questions. And can we give it up for Katie Bell as she comes tonight? Can we give it up for Micah Pace as he brings me the chair? Come on. Yeah. Awesome. Where is the microphone? I got you, Katie. There it is.
Hey, Austin, you have the microphone.
Second microphone. All right. Here we go. All right, Katie, so the first thing I want you to do is, if you don't mind just introducing yourself to the students. Maybe some of them know you, maybe they've seen you before, but just maybe tell them about who you are, what you enjoy doing, stuff like that.
Yes, let's see. Oh, the microphone's working this time. Hi, family. So, yes, if some of you don't know me, my name is Katie, and I have 2 dogs. I'm married. I love a hodgepodge of things like plants and TV shows, and my sister-in-law got me into Fortnite, so yeah. Hodgepodge, yeah.
Best game ever.
Yep, so that's just a little bit about me.
It's a lie. And so I'm curious, Katie, I myself was asking myself this question. This is just a fun question. If you could only listen to the music that you currently have downloaded on your phone, would you rather only listen to those for the rest of your life, or would you rather only listen to new music that comes out?
Oh. Probably new music, because I'm one of those that kind of plays it on repeat until you're like sick of it.
Okay. Yeah.
It's really good for those first 3 days.
What about you guys? If you would rather only listen to the songs that you have downloaded now, that means like songs that you love, you may have to give up if you don't choose this, right? So the songs that you currently have downloaded, you can only listen to those for the rest of your life, or you give up all those and you only listen to new music. Number
Okay.
one, if that's you, make some noise. Let me see your hands. All right, that's all you. Okay.
Y'all
If you would rather listen to new music,
Y'all are so quick to... I was gonna say, y'all must have good music downloaded.
I know. I have a lot of music downloaded, so I have a tough one with that. I kind of think that I would choose the first one just because of how much music I have downloaded.
Yeah.
But I know I would get a little bit into it, and I'd be like, what did I do? Like, I'm tired of this, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's just some fun stuff so they can get to know you. But Katie, you were kind of sharing your testimony with me these past couple months, and I thought it fit really, really well for this series as we begin to talk about our mind and as we begin to talk about what God is walking us through. So my first question for you, as I've gotten to know you, you shared with me that you haven't always been disabled, you haven't always been in a wheelchair. So do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, so actually, quite a few years now, so probably about 5-6 years ago, I actually had gotten my EMT certification. I was working on becoming a surgeon. I was running like 4 miles a day in powerlifting, and I felt like, honestly, I had it all together. I was like, I am getting after life. I'm doing it. Like, look at me. Okay, I'm getting it. So I felt like I had it all together. Life was going great. But then things started to change. And so if any of you are like me, I wrote down some points, otherwise I go on bunny trails. So, yeah. So to be honest, if we're just gonna be real and honest, before my disability, I thought I was letting God kind of be along for my ride. I was like, oh, love you, God. You fit in the cracks, or when I need you, or when I want you. And so as much as I felt like I had everything together, life was going great, I was going towards my dream job, I had just become an EMT, all of that, I also had a lot of anxiety and pressure and this just feeling of this weight of keeping up with all my goals to achieve my worth, all of that. So as much as I was also like ecstatic because my life was going great, there's also this part of me that felt empty and anxious.
Yeah. So how did your life change when you became disabled? What was different about it, and how did that affect you?
Yeah, so it wasn't like an instant thing becoming disabled. So I started having seizures starting in high school, and they kind of calmed down. And then after I became an EMT, I started having them again and had to drop out of college. I actually had to drop out twice just because I was in and out of the hospital so much, or I'd be hospitalized, or, all the tests. And so that was kind of the start of it. And for about 6 years, we had kind of been searching for answers. And found out I had a genetic disorder. It's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Yeah, it's a mouthful, but basically what it means is I mutate one of my genes, and that causes me to dislocate my joints all the time. So imagine dislocating your joints probably about 30 times a day. I started not being able to eat much solid food. I started having to drink my food. So I drink feeding tube formula. Actually, it doesn't taste too bad, but trust me, 3 times a day, every day, it's not exactly great anymore. Yeah, not what I just looking forward to. But it also caused heart problems, so I'd pass out. It was a lot. It was a lot. I mean, I went from running all the time, going after my dream job, to not being able to eat solid food, to not being able to walk anymore because of the pain and because my joints were too unstable and dislocating. So it was a lot, and I felt like in becoming disabled, that I lost my purpose. I lost my worth. I felt like there's nothing else. I was wasted. Like, what can I do now? I'm broken.
I think we've all kind of been there. I think we've all kind of had moments like that where we felt like, wow, this life event happened. Now what? Now what? And so you kind of talked about some of the emotions that you had, but what kind of changed when it came to your view on God? What maybe were some questions that you began to walk through or ask him, and how was your relationship with him after all of this began to happen?
Yeah, so to be honest, at first, I honestly was pretty angry. I was mad at God. Something my mom told me, though, that has actually brought me a lot of comfort is God can handle you beating on his chest. He can handle your anger and being mad at him for whatever situation is going on in your life, whether it be your parents, whether it be school, whether it be health, whether it be finances. It doesn't matter. He can take it. He's a big God. He's not going to get hurt by your anger and your feelings. It's okay to feel that. So I honestly was just working through a lot of that emotion, and I just felt like he wasted me. And so there was a moment where I was actually driving down the road in the car. That's where a lot of my thoughts and talking with God happens. And I was like, God, why would you waste me? I was planning on going to Africa for you. I was going to be a doctor abroad. I was going to do all these amazing things for you, and you wasted me. Why on earth would you allow me to be in a wheelchair, to be disabled? Like, what the heck? And this is when I know it was definitely God speaking to me, because it like hit me over the head like a brick.
As he's good at, right?
Yeah. I stayed on the road. That was good. But he said, this is your Africa. Your disability is what I am going to use to show others me and glorify me. I'm using this, not what you thought I was going to use. And he hit me with this verse, and this little side note, but I'm a firm believer that you don't have to memorize the whole Bible, but it's so important to read the whole Bible, because there are times God's going to use it in your life in a moment you have no idea. And that's what God did here. He hit me with 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10. Oh, perfect. It's behind me. I'm going to read it for you, because otherwise I butcher it. So, each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weakness, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weakness, and in the insults, the hardship, the persecution, and the troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. It doesn't mean that, all of a sudden he's going to just heal me and I'm going to be strong. That's not what he's talking about here. He was saying, through your weakness, I'm showing everyone my power.
That's good.
I'm showing you that I am a big God that wastes nothing, that will use you and cares for you, and that you are strong through me. You are strong through the purpose I have given you. So, yeah.
Wow. That's good. So in what ways did maybe, like, we all have these views of ourselves, so in what ways did maybe that conversation with God, or kind of the whole journey, change the way you view your worth or your purpose or yourself?
Yeah, so to be honest, after that conversation with God, I'd love to say I was just like, wow.
Sounds good, God. Yes, thank you.
That's great. That clears up everything. No, I was still like, I don't want that. I don't want you to use me that way. I kind of wanted to do this thing. And
no,
so,
it's Grand Junction, but it's not Africa, right?
Yeah. So it was a little, it wasn't like it just instantly, I just felt like, oh, rainbows, butterflies, this is great. No. But what it did start was that conversation with God of like, okay, if this is what you're going to use, then you're going to have to show me. I do not understand it. And it started this spark to seek him, just to press into him, to go, God, okay, what's next? Okay, God, how are you going to use me next? Okay, I don't get it, or I'm having a horrible day and this pain is too excruciating, but you tell me that there's purpose, that you have a purpose for me today, each day. So I'm going to need more of you today. And so through that, he actually led me to start helping with youth. So that is part of why I am here. And then I also met some of the best friends I've ever made who are also in wheelchairs. We started a ministry. I helped lead that. And honestly, today, after all this time of seeking God and pressing into Him, people ask me if I could just get better in an instant or give up disability, would I? And honestly, I wouldn't trade it if it meant I had to trade the relationship I have with God now. I think that's the biggest thing about hard times is we go, I just want to get through this. The thing that God does, though, with the circumstances in our life is God grows us closer to Him. He uses it in a way that maybe He wouldn't have been able to get close to us otherwise. And so I've become closer and have a peace that I never had before. There's a peace of knowing that my worth is in Him and my purpose is where He leads me, instead of the pressure of having to be like, I've got to make it big, or I have to figure out my purpose. Thank you. And that my worth is in what I do and the anxiety that comes through that. And so as we're talking about anxiety, sometimes it looks a little different. Sometimes it's peace comes from the hardship.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Kate, I just want to say thank you for being vulnerable. I know it's a hard thing to share your testimony and all the things that God walks us through. And so thank you for being transparent tonight and kind of letting us into your walk with God and your relationship with Him. Can we give it for Katie tonight? Awesome. So Katie hit on this word, anxiety. And I kind of want to talk to you guys about that a little bit more tonight before we kind of begin to wrap up. You see, I look at the word anxiety as that word right here. And I noticed something about it, and it sticks out to me this week as I was beginning to prepare for this message. I looked at how it was spelled, right? And anxiety, man, as an emotion is not that fun. But I was looking at it as I was typing it over and over in my message, and something stuck out to me. And you see it. We can see it on this next slide right here. You see it right there? It's very, very subtle. But in the middle of anxiety is usually I. You see, when we begin to live life with this I mentality, when it's I can do it, or I can accomplish things, when we think I, we begin to fall into this trap. You see, at the center of your anxiety is typically this I mentality. And I think the reason many of us tonight fall into different scenarios and fall into these moments is because of that right there. We put ourselves on a place that we were never intended to be. We put ourselves on the throne that was intended for God. We make ourselves the status, the representation of all that is to be. You see, I don't know about you, but I look at the way that we speak and I look at our language and we say, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I have what it takes. I don't know if I can make it. If I. You see, you can't spell anxiety without putting I right in the middle of it. But there's another word that's coming up on the screen right here, and it's pride. And you see, the idea of pride is also the same way. Pride has a me-centered and I-centered word. You can't spell pride without putting yourself in the middle. You see, maybe the reason some of you in here tonight are dealing with some of the things that you're dealing with is because you're focusing on your own strength. You're focusing on your own will, on your own power. And rather than giving it over to God like He intended to begin with, we think, well, I can take care of it. I can do it. I can accomplish it. I can get to where I need to go. And when we do that, what happens is we begin to weigh ourselves down. We begin to carry around things that we were never meant to carry. We begin to wear this weight and these chains that begin to drag us down. And the longer that we stay in this state that thinks that I can do it, the harder it is for us to allow God to take those burdens away from us. You see, He wants to take care of it. He wants to help us out. But sometimes we don't let Him because of this mentality. that we can fix it ourselves. We can take care of it. You see, 1 Peter 5:7 says this. It tells us to cast all of our anxiety onto him. Why? Because he cares for you. Now, this is a verse that many of us know, many of us look at, and many of us refer to when we're going through difficult situations. I'm sure you've had it said to you before when you're walking through something. You go to a leader, you go to a parent, you go to a pastor, and they're talking with you and they remind you of this verse right here. And they say, listen, I know you're going through a lot, but cast your anxieties onto him. Cast all those things to him. Why? Because he cares for you. And while we know this verse tonight, one of the things I want to challenge you on is changing and tweaking your mindset. You see, the idea of casting your anxiety, we look at as a command. We look at it as this is what you are supposed to do. This is what you're required to do. This is what you're called to do. It is a command in some of our minds. And so you walk through life, myself included, and when stress comes along, worry comes along, situations arise, hurt happens, whatever it might be, and we begin to get worried, anxious. We begin to think, well, okay, like I'm just going to give it to God. I'm going to give it to God, and great. Absolutely. But we still try to fight our own battles. We give it to God, but we're like, okay, well, I'm just going to kind of help God a little bit. We give it to him and we think, well, I'm going to keep pushing this way, and I'm going to keep trying things on the way that was working for me before, and I'm going to keep pushing forward in my own way. And what happens is we don't truly do what the verse actually tells us to do, which is in 1 Peter 5:6. In 1 Peter 5:6, it says, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he might lift you up in due time. You see, the command in this verse is not to cast your anxiety. The command in this verse is to humble yourself. You see, I told you pride. Pride is all about humility. And getting rid of pride is all about humility. Our command is to humble ourselves. To get the I out of the center of our life, to get the I out of all that we do. We need to reach the point where we begin to say, you know what, I can't eat without God. I can't breathe without God. I can't live without God. I can't go to school without God. I can't love without God. I can't have joy without God. I can't without God. You see, it's the moment we get out of the way, out of the center, and we allow God to take his place, is the moment that our lives begin to change. When worry comes along, when stress comes along, when anxiety comes along, when an unfortunate news, when a crippling situation happens, if we place God in the center of it, then everything is all right. But if everything boils down to I can do it, then very quickly we begin to realize that life is not so perfect and life falls apart in front of us. You see, what I understand about God is that he is always there to lift you up. He's always there to lift you up. Recently, me and Brooke purchased a home over in the Fruita area, and what people didn't tell me about this area is that weeds are crazy here. Like, they grow super high, super fast. And so when we bought our home, man, I was really, really good about going out to the backyard and plucking the weeds, taking care of them and getting them out of the ground when they were tiny, right? I was pretty good at it. Now, I missed a couple days here and there, but I never really let it get out of control. But I went away for my brother's graduation, and so that was about 3 or 4 days' time. And nobody told me it happens overnight, right? And so I come back home to this massive amount of weeds that are now tree trunks in size. And I'm like, no longer can I just reach down and pull it out. Now I gotta dig it out. Now I gotta get it. And so my kind of lazy side kicked in, and I was like, you know what? Like, I don't need to dig them out. Like, I'm just gonna cut them. Like, I don't have time to go through and just dig all these things out. I'm just gonna cut them. And I have a video real quick that I want to play, because I want you to look at kind of the way that my yard looked, because I decided to cut them. Like, this was several months of just kind of letting it go. And this is actually pretty good, because I went through and cut some of them out even in that point. But I had some weeds that were up to like 6-7 feet tall that were covering my fence line. Massive weeds. That it started off small, and they grew up overnight. I didn't take care of them like I was supposed to. I kind of just made the surface of my lawn look good. But what was happening underneath was something much more dangerous, something much more stressful, something much more intrusive. And I think about that scenario and I think about our lives. You see, I think sometimes what happens is we go through life and situations happen. Worry happens, a bad report comes, friendships begin to break up, all these stresses of life come. And instead of dealing with them in the proper way, we kind of just try to brush over them. We say, you know what? Yes, this hurts. But I'm just going to pretend like everything is good. We live in a social media world. We put the best pictures, the best things out there for others to see, right? We don't really post the real, the raw stuff all the time. We just say like, my life is perfect, my life is great. And all of a sudden, if we aren't careful, if we don't take care of the root, our lives begin to look a whole lot like this. And we look back and we think, how did I get here? How did I get to this moment? How did my life become so unmanageable? There's so much hurt. There's so much pain. There's so much situation that's going on all around me, and it seems like I can't get it under control. Listen, I'm here to tell you tonight that sometimes our anxiety is not about our anxiety, but there is a root of that issue, and that root is pride. You see, if we were to get rid of our pride, if we were to humble ourselves before God, to say, you know what, I can't do this on my own. I can't take away the situations myself. I can't do this on my own strength. Then the fruit of anxiety will begin to go away. You see, when you take things away by the root, no longer are they an issue. No longer do they grow like they were. No longer do you have to deal with them in that way. It's a different kind of way. You still have to deal with some pain. You still have to deal with some hurt. But when you know that your situation is in God's hands, that He is fighting the battle, it makes all the difference. Anxiety is just the fruit of pride. And we must pluck out the root at the center. You see, I've been a pastor long enough to know some of you are sitting here right now thinking this right here. Well, I don't know. Like, you don't know my issue. You don't know what I'm going through. Like, if you knew my situation, you would speak differently. I don't want to do that, because if I do that and I don't accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, I might look stupid. Listen, let me tell you, we live in a very me-focused world, and so a lot of times when we're worried about others seeing us look stupid, the reality is they're too focused on themselves to actually see us. Let's just be honest. And so if we were to humble ourselves, life begins to change. You see, who better to teach us about humility than Peter? I read the story at the beginning. But you see, Peter, he was different than the rest of the disciples in that story. We look at Peter oftentimes and we reflect on that moment as his lack of faith, of how he took his eyes off of Jesus, of how he got himself into this situation and he began to sink. And Jesus says, wow, where's your faith? Why did you doubt? You see, the difference between Peter and the rest of the disciples is Peter said, you know what? No longer will I live in comfort, but I'm going to get out of the boat. I'm going to walk into the unknown. I'm going to embrace this head on. Why? Because I'm going to fix my eyes on Jesus. Rather than what is going on around me, I'm not going to worry about that, but I'm going to begin to focus on Him. And I think some of us find ourselves here tonight in a very similar situation to Peter, where you are in the middle of the water. You have gotten out of the boat and you begin to sink. You see, Peter tells us in 1 Peter that the enemy is real, that he is here to kill, steal, and destroy, that he is prowling like a lion, trying to isolate, trying to destroy you with fear, with worry, with doubt, with depression, with anxiety. But God is in control. God is in control. And there may be a season of hurt, there may be a season of pain, but He is always faithful to be there. He is always faithful to show up when you need Him. He is always faithful to reach out His hand like He did to Peter and say, let me help you up. You see, what Peter did in that moment is he humbled himself. He humbled himself, and you said, I'm not going to let myself worry about looking dumb. I'm not going to worry about what others might think, but I'm going to trust that God is in control of this situation. It says the disciples looked out and they saw a figure walking on the water. It says they were afraid. They were worried. They were living in fear. They thought it was a ghost. And I think some of us here tonight, we are looking at our situations as the storm is rising, and God has been calling out for your attention. He's been saying, let me help you. But because of that anxiety that's beginning to cripple you, you're living in fear, hiding in the boat, saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And the whole time God is saying, here I am. Here I am. You see, the presence of the storm is not the absence of Jesus. When there's difficulties in your life, it's easy to say, God, where were you? God, where are you right now as I'm struggling, as I'm doubting, as I'm hurting? God, where are you? He's with you. And sometimes what he's asking you to do is to humble yourself, to step out of the boat, to begin to walk on the water. And listen, it's okay. It's okay to stumble. Why? Because he's there. He's there. The thing I love about this story, it always sticks out to me. It's immediately following this, it says Jesus reached out his hand, he picks up Peter, he takes him back to the boat, he puts him in the boat, and the storm calms down. You see, in your life, Jesus steps into the boat and the storm calms down, but what happens is sometimes, man, you've gotten wet. There's some things that you've gone through. There's some issues that you've faced. There's some things that you've overcome because Jesus helped. And what happens is you begin to get in that boat dripping wet. You begin to get into situations covered in water. And what happens is that water, when he got in the boat, I guarantee you it got on the other disciples. I guarantee you it began to get on the other people around him as they made their way back to land as day rise. I'm sure people began to look at Peter and they began to say, Peter, why are you wet? Why are you covered in water? And Peter was able to look at them in that moment. He said, listen, I'm covered in water because I was able to walk on water. This is what I've gone through. And I began to drown and Jesus saved me. You see, sometimes in your life, you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to understand that Jesus doesn't cause the storms, but he's there with you during the storms. He's always faithful to show up when you need him the most. If you would humble yourself and begin to walk towards him, man, he will deliver you from that storm. And because of that deliverance, you will begin to impact others around you. You see, the disciples, it says in that moment, the very, very next verse, it says they looked at Jesus and they said, surely you are the Son of God. Peter's faith increased their faith. Peter's testimony increased their testimony. Peter began to walk around the town, I assume. People began to ask questions, and he was able to point to Jesus and say, this is the Son of God, who showed up when I needed him, who was faithful, who was there. With all head bowed all over this room, every eye closed. I'm beginning to close, and I know there's multiple people in this room who fall into these categories. And maybe you're here tonight, and life has took a turn that you didn't expect. Life has begun to change, it's begun to shift from the way that you once thought it should be going. You find yourself in the middle of this storm. You're scared, you're afraid. You're not sure what's next. Listen, tonight you have the opportunity to get out of the boat. You have the opportunity to put your trust in Jesus, your focus on him, and say, you know what? I'm not going to live in fear. I'm not going to live in comfort. I'm not going to live in the known. But instead, God, I'm going to trust you fully that even in the midst of this situation, even in the midst of this storm, I'm going to begin to walk towards you. I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to humble myself, and as I do so, man, my anxiety is going to fall away. My fear is going to fall away. My hurt's going to fall away as I focus on you. Or maybe you're here tonight. You've been doing the church thing for a while. You've been following Jesus for a while. You've gotten out of the boat. You begin to walk on the water. And you begin to walk through those tough situations, those tough times. And as you get to a point in life, man, the storm begins to creep up. It begins to swirl around you. And you've been beginning to make progress towards Jesus. And you've slipped. You see, Peter in that moment was in an unknown place, an uncomfortable place. He wasn't in the boat, but he wasn't quite with Jesus. And some of you here tonight are in that same mindset as Peter of saying, Lord, help me. And you're looking around and you're like, why isn't God helping me? Why am I not out of the storm yet? Listen, he's with you. He's with you. But maybe you find yourself in that moment because it didn't happen exactly like you thought, you begin to fight your own battles again. Listen, let me tell you, trust God. Trust God. He works all things out. His timing is perfect. His timing is perfect. And so maybe you haven't seen the answer yet, but you will. Maybe you haven't seen the breakthrough yet, but you will. Maybe you haven't seen the storm calm down in your life yet, but you will. You will see God begin to use the broken things, the hurting things, the shattered things in miraculous ways if you begin to only trust. We have to humble ourselves before Him. So if that's you and you fall into one of those categories, whether tonight, man, your anxiety is crippling you, you've never got out of that boat, or man, you're here tonight and you're like, man, I've fallen and I begin to look away from Jesus. I begin to rely on my own talents, my own abilities. I begin to do the things my way. And you would say, you know what, tonight, I'll make the decision to follow Him. I'll make the decision to look at Him. I'm going to make the decision to humble myself. To take me out of the center and to put Him in the center. With no one looking around, every head bowed, every eye closed. If that's you, I just want to know who I'm praying for. Would you just slip up your hand? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Hands all over this room. Hands all over this room. Lord, I pray right now for every student, every leader in this place. Lord, I thank you that you are there when we need you. God, that you are faithful to show up. God, I pray right now for storms in this room to begin to cease because of the presence of you. God, that as you are walking through these moments with us, God, I pray that you would begin to bring a peace to us. God, that we would reach a place where we would say, you know what, I can't do this on my own. That we would stop trying to do it under our own strength. But God, that we would begin to trust you and your strength. God, that while we may not understand the why, we understand the who that's in charge. God, that as we begin to walk through moments and we begin to walk through difficult times, God, that we would begin to see testimonies. God, we would begin to see breakthroughs. God, we would begin to see miracles, God, that would not only impact our lives, change our lives, but that they would begin to impact people around us. God, I pray right now over this room, God, for individuals who are hurting, God, who are seeking, God, who are dealing with stress and anxiety. God, I pray right now that you would just bring a calming, God, a peace, God, as they begin to look at you, God, that fruit would disappear, God, because we are dealing with the root right now. God, it's not about our will, it's not about our choices, but God, it's about focusing on you. God, about making you the center. You see, on our own, God, we know that we can't accomplish anything. But God, with you, nothing is impossible. God, your will is perfect. Your timing is perfect. God, I pray that you would work in our life. You begin to speak to us. Students, we're going to close tonight like this. If you just want to spend time with God, man, there's something powerful about kind of getting rid of all the distraction, getting rid of the things around us. You see, life is crazy and chaotic. There's something symbolic about coming up to the front and leaving things here, spiritually speaking. So we're going to open up the altars tonight to do so. Man, because listen, there's hands all over this room. There's things that you're dealing with. There's things that I can never understand, that I will never personally walk through. There's situations all around this room that bring hurt, they bring division, they bring pain, that I will never understand. But God does. God does. We can bring it to him tonight. We can lay it down here. So I'm going to pray one more time, and as I do, as I close, when I say amen, and I want to invite you, if you need to spend time with God, the altars are open. This is between you and him. It's an act of humility, saying, God, I need you. So Lord, we need you right now. God, would you begin it right now in this moment to do what only you can do? We look to you. God, we run to you. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Listen, if you want to spend time up here at the altars are open right now. Just want to say we love you guys. If you don't, here's what I ask. I ask that you remain quiet and you leave quiet for people to spend time up here. We love you guys, and we will see you next week.